Welcome. I'd like to talk to you today about some thoughts I had on what it is to be blameless. What is blamelessness? What is it like to be blameless in society? What is it like to be blameless to God in the universe? So as we walk down that little path this morning for the next 15 minutes, I'd like to ask that you'd be blessed by God in this journey. God, just grant us your mercy and kindness today, and may we see you a little bit more clearly for having spent a few moments with you. I ask in your name. Amen. So what is blamelessness? To be blameless. We know what it's like to be blamed. There's plenty of blame running around the earth at the moment, certainly in a marriage. If you want to get on with your wife or your husband, you're going to have to learn how not to blame each other for doing everything that's wrong. There's plenty there to blame people for. You just got to learn not to do it. But why would you do that? Surely wrongdoing needs to be brought out, it needs to be shown, it needs to be highlighted so the person can do something about it. Yes, that's one way of looking at it, but how does God look at it? That's probably the bigger issue, because when I look at all the wrongdoing that I do, that's where I struggle. That's where I need to know the grace of God. That's where I need to understand what God is really like. So I'd like to introduce you to the idea that blameless does not mean without sin. Blameless does not mean without sin. So what does blameless mean? Blameless means that it is without accusation. So if in a marriage that you didn't accuse each other, then you would be blameless within that marriage. Doesn't mean that you weren't doing things wrong within that marriage. It just means you weren't being blamed for them. You see, we suffer from this thing called guilt, and that's probably an old word now, but guilt really means that I am in physically a state of guilt as well as I feel guilty, and the feelings of guilt is where the problem comes for when I do wrong. And we all do. Anybody that's honest will just know that to be true. So what do you do when you have done wrong and you think, well, who do I need to justify this to? And that's a whole other subject, but I just want to concentrate today on what it is to be blameless. Blameless. That really means that there's less blame in there. There's less blame in there. So share with me, if you would. Let's turn over to a passage in Psalms. So halfway through the Old Testament, you'll find the book of Psalms. And in there, if you turn to chapter 51, Psalms 51 and verse 7. Psalms 51, verse 7 says this: "Cleanse me with hyssop, and I will be clean. Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow." Cleanse me with hyssop, and I will be clean. Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow. There's a belief statement here that David is saying in the Psalms that he wrote, which were usually song-based. The lyrics that he wrote, the thoughts that he had were quite meaningful. When he says, "Cleanse me with hyssop," what does that mean in terms of blamelessness? Well, the hyssop plant was used in the Passover. If you go back to when the children of Israel were delivered from the Egyptians, the very night they left was a killing night. The angel of the Lord came down and wiped out all the firstborn sons, unless they saw on the post head above the door blood that was from a recently sacrificed lamb, and it was put on there by the hyssop plant. So it's interesting that the hyssop plant has this fragrance about it. It's a very strong odour that it had, but the issue there was that they used to dip it in the blood, and they'd actually put it on the top of the post and on the sides of the doors, the entrance way to that home. So the hyssop plant became a symbol for putting blood at the doorway. What's interesting is that the blood wasn't placed upon the people. The father of the house did not go around his children and his wife and put blood on them, and then himself. He actually put blood on the doorway. Now, we can talk about that another time perhaps, but the big issue here is that we don't need to be doused in blood. We just need the doorway to be marked with blood. You see, that blameless is not to be without sin. I am a sinner. That's just the state I'm in, the state I was born in. If we go back in Psalms, we'll see this in this chapter. But here David is saying something in belief. Cleanse me with hyssop, and I will be clean. Here is a faith statement that David is saying. It's a statement of fact. Jesus, if you put your blood on the doorway to my life, I will be clean. It doesn't mean I stop doing wrong. That's what's interesting. In that house that I exist in, I don't stop doing wrong. But on the doorway to that house is marked with a sign that says that I belong to God. Now that's the difference. I belong to God, and so therefore I am blameless. Why? Because the accuser or the blaming person doesn't have access to that home. Now, we'll cover that in the next time. We'll talk about the accuser and how that works. But the blamelessness that I have, or the blame that I can shed, is simply because I have the promise of the mark on the door. So here we see a faith statement, I will be clean. I will be clean. And that's not talking about future tense, I will be clean. It's talking about affirmative, I will be clean when you do this, Jesus, for me. I will be clean. I know that to be the case. That is in the past, the present, the future. I will be clean. And here's how we know that that was true, because then he goes on and says, wash me, and I will be whiter than snow. Now, who does the washing? You see, when I jump in the shower, I wash myself. When I jump in the bath, I wash myself. When I wash my hands, I'm washing my own hands. Now, when I was a little child, somebody did that for me. Interesting. When it comes to Jesus as little children, remember that. But Jesus was the one who was washing David. Jesus was the one who was washing David. David wasn't able to wash himself. Wash me, he says. Wash me, God. Just wash me. And the result of that, I will be whiter than snow. That's a faith statement again. I will be whiter than snow. Now, I don't know how you get whiter than snow. And snow is just pretty white. It's just white as white as white. On a bright sunny day, you look at the snow and it is just white. Some would say you've got to put sunglasses on. So how you get whiter than snow, I don't know. But what David was saying here is that whiter than snow is just absolutely pure white. It's nothing whiter than that. And that's probably an interesting way of looking at things, because it doesn't matter what the colour of your skin is. We're not white. Right? We're pink. We're yellowy pink. Some of us are browner than that, but really we're not that white. This is pure white. When you wash me, I will be white. Why? Because I am blameless, not sinless. I want you to know that. I want you to understand that, please. Not sinless, but blameless. Because the way that I stand before God is boldly, and I can come easily to his throne. So we see this come up again too in another verse, and I would like to point you to the book of Daniel. If you come over to the book of Daniel, and you'll find this in chapter 7 of the book of Daniel. This one's in the Old Testament as well. It's about 2/3 of the way through the Old Testament, Daniel. Chapter 7, and let's go to verse 9. Daniel chapter 7, verse 9. And here's Daniel speaking about his encounter with God. As I looked, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. The Ancient of Days is commonly referred to as Jesus Christ. The Ancient of Days took his seat. Here's what's interesting, he says about Jesus' clothing. His clothing was as white as snow. The hair of his head was white like wool. Now, I'd like to think that my hair is getting white like wool as well, but this is not what Jesus was being referred to as by Daniel. He's saying that white is in purity, is that the hair of Jesus' head was just white and pure, describing who Jesus is. Now, what's interesting is when we are seen as being white as snow, when we are being seen that way, we're seen by Jesus as being a reflection of who he is. Needs further explanation, I know, but maybe for another day. Come over with me to one extra verse here. There was a violent earthquake at the end of Jesus' time in the grave, and the angel of the Lord came down from heaven, going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. This is found in Matthew, the first book of the New Testament, Matthew verse 28, towards the very end of that chapter, or that book. Matthew 28 verse 2. There was a big earthquake that happened. The angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, he rolled back the stone, and he sat on it. And he just sat down. But interesting to know how this angel was described. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. Now, his appearance was not like lightning because he was fast, because he wasn't fast. He was sitting on a stone. He actually just sat down. I love that. You know, he's so relaxed. He says, "Oh, I know Jesus is going to come out shortly. I'll just sit here and wait." You see, the angels know Jesus very well. They've spent eternity with him already, and they know exactly what he's like. And they'll say, "He'll come forward when he's ready." So I'm just going to sit here. I love how relaxed the angel was. So we know that he wasn't fast like lightning. So what was lightning like? Well, that flash of light is white as. It's absolutely pure white. Absolutely pure white. And to back that up, he says his clothes were as white as snow. So he was white, 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 white. You know, And again, remember, I'm not white. I'm some colour of pink and yellow, or somewhat brown, and some are darker than me. But we're not white. We're not the pure white that these were. However, coming back to Psalms chapter 51, verse 7, cleanse me with hyssop, and I will be clean. Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow. Cleanse me with hyssop, and I will be clean. Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow. Now just remember who does the washing and who does the cleaning. Right? It's the God of the universe that does that, not me. I can't wash me. I can't clean me. It's the God of the universe that steps in and does this. Because blameless is not about what I do. Blameless is about the condition that I stand in my home. It's about the mark on the doorway that simply says, this home, this life that I have belongs to God. And because of that, I stand blameless in the universe. And more importantly, I stand blameless in Jesus' sight. If you've never understood that piece before, and if you'd like to just let over to God and let Jesus be the one that actually walks you to the place in front of him that says you can stand there blameless in front of me. If you'd like to know what that freedom is like, would you just pray this prayer with me now? God, I just want to thank you for your kindness to us to this point, for the life that you give. But I have led a life that I've taken on the blame. I've let other people accuse me. And I'd really like to know what it's like to live the blameless life. I'd like to have that mark on the door of my house that says, this house belongs to you. I want to give over my life to you, God, and let you come through that doorway and show me how precious and blameless that I am in your sight. Amen. If you've prayed that prayer, find a nice place to join up with some other people who understand that piece of the gospel, the good news. We use the word gospel for good news. And if you've been a Christian for a long time, you haven't been refreshed by that, I just pray that your soul and your spirit will be refreshed by praying that prayer as well, to confirm your standing before God, before Jesus, the one who died for you and I, the one who demonstrated his love for you and me. I pray that you'll be encouraged and just refreshed in your spirit today by your right standing and your blamelessness before God.